Alright, so we're going to talk about roofing costs here. So this is a standard 3 tab. We've lived in this house 12 years, and I would guess the shingles were on before we bought the house at least 15, maybe even 20. So we're definitely getting to the life of the shingle. I did a couple things before we got to this point. So I put in a bathroom vent, and I've done some videos on that. You can tell here, this is how it was put in, how it was flashed, I guess, if you want to call it that. So, and I got one on the other end. We'll take a walk down there and look at that one. Alright, so here's the other one. And again, I put these in. No problems, no leaks, nothing like that. Never any issues. So, and really, I wasn't in the market of getting the roof replaced, but I'm going to show you why it's kind of led to that point. Obviously, there were some shingles that let go in a storm, so we kind of just blackjacked them back down. Some on the ridge here. Had one that was completely out. Just kind of glued that one back in. There is 2 layers of shingles, so when it was re-shingled, I would assume for the first time, so the initial shingles are like a white, I believe. They put these red ones on, and now we're going to be going with a brown. But if you look over here, you can see somebody is desperate. So I put in this kitchen range vent, flashed it the same way as all the bathroom vents, and the thing leaked like an absolute sieve. So the first desperation was I went through and I blackjacked around both sides like nobody's business. I pulled up shingles here, blackjacked underneath all of them to make sure everything was set down in front here. I'm pretty sure the leak was coming from somewhere up here or over on this side. So anyway, yeah, it was leaking bad. I mean, we were getting a good puddle of water on our counter leaking through between the vent work and the range hood there or whatever. So then the last desperation move was to do this, which was take a gallon pail and basically just dumped it on the roof. Rain was expected like, I don't know, 6 hours. You're supposed to give it 24. It's not even like dry. I think it was probably too thick, but at that point I just needed it to stop. So I just quickly dumped this out, kind of brushed it around a little bit and just left it. I don't know that it's leaking anymore, but obviously this is not the right way to do it. So that kind of brings me to why I'm redoing the roof. The issue was I had a couple guys come out here. They looked at it and they said, well, there's nothing wrong with the way you did it. And that was before I put all this blackjack down. They're just like, there's nothing you did wrong looking at it. They're like, we'd have to come out and replace the vent, pull it up. And I was like, well, these shingles are pretty brittle. If you start going around and disturbing some of the other ones, how are we not going to create more leaks? And everybody kind of agreed that like we're at the life of this roof. It's obviously not the worst they've ever seen, but if we look at some of these, like this side here, this is going to be a south side that we're looking at here, southern exposure. You can see we're losing quite a bit of shingles, or stones I should say. There was a couple spots that I saw some nail heads poking through the shingle as well. So obviously we got to do a replacement. So without further ado, let's get into the numbers. So I'm gonna just kind of walk around and I'll give you an idea of what it costs here. So I had 4 guys come out to give me an estimate. Everybody had a different square amount figured for the number of shingles. The most being 40 square, the least being 35 square. So this is a hip roof with a couple different valleys and a couple different ridges. So it's somewhere between 40 and 35 square. The guy with 40 square, he was figuring ice and water. I don't know what it's called. It's some sort of ice and water barrier. He figured 2 layers of that all the way around. Something about being inside the heated heated wall, I guess, to prevent ice dams. He was at 19,300 for this roof, and he figured, like I said, 40 square. And then there was two in the middle. One was like 16.3. I think he figured like 37 square. There was a guy at about 11,000. He was figuring, I think, 35 square. And then I had an independent contractor guy look at it, and he figured 10,800. And he was right around that same like 35 square is what he was figuring. So they all are going to do it the same way. That was kind of why I brought out the most expensive guy. I knew he was going to be expensive, but I wanted to see if they were doing something different and why they would be so expensive. What surprised me is the guy that was at 19,000 said it would take his crew about 3 days, which that's not really impressive. The independent contractor guy, he figured the same amount of time, and it sounded like he would be the only guy shingling, and he just had a crew tearing off and that type of thing. All of the groups are using synthetic felt paper or tar paper, whatever you want to call it. They're all going to use ice and water through the valleys there. And then I think the most important part, they all are using Owens Corning duration shingles. All are using the exact same type of shingles. So really, it's good to know that the most expensive company, that one also, part of the reason they're so expensive is a warranty that comes with the roof. I'm willing to bet that's why they're about 3,000 higher than the kind of the middle of the road guys. They offer some ridiculous warranty that includes labor for the roof. I'm not interested in that. I'm thinking if you have a crew come up here and do it the right way, you shouldn't have issues. The shingle is a pretty good shingle at duration. So it's got like a nailing flange, and that's mesh, so the nails aren't supposed to pull through, I guess. So we'll take a look at those in a second. The color we're going with is going to be a dark brown. Like I said, we'll look at them and kind of talk it through a little bit. One other issue we had, I'll probably take you up in the attic at some point. There was a dip down on the south end, garage end, and wasn't really sure what was going on with that. And you can still kind of see there's just a little bit of a dip in there. So there was a broken rafter. There was a knot right through the middle of the rafter, and then that rafter also carries the load of the garage ceiling. So that was broke. So what I did was take a 2x8 Doug fir and basically just sistered it together with a bunch of bolts and basically just bolts. I don't think I used any screws. You know, fender washers, bolts and fender washers. So that should be good. I was gonna have someone else check that out just to make sure. All right, so here we are in the attic. This is gonna be quick because it is hot. But you can see how I bolted through here. So the one we're looking at is the one that's actually cracked or broke. And it was actually cracked right here where this knot is. And you can kind of probably see where it's cracked. Yeah. So that knot runs the length of that 2x8 widthwise. So not real good. These uprights that are coming down tie into the garage ceiling here. So that's actually helped carrying that. So that's part of the issue I think we had, is there's a lot of weight there, and then the fact that there was a big ugly knot that didn't help. So let's look on the other side. So you can see how I cut it to sit on the top of the wall there. And I might run some more bolts in, kind of sporadically, put them in here. Didn't want to put them one above each other because I didn't want more cracking, but this is a nice piece of Doug fir here that I picked out. And the arrow should be the crown. We got it crowned too, so hopefully it's doing everything that it should to help carry the load there. I know that the plywood was actually up at one point. We got that to come back down, flatten it out a little bit. So yeah, hopefully that fixes the trick there. Like I said, there's still a little bit of a wobble in the roof there, but this should be carrying the load much nicer than what it was. And this was all hand framed here. This was a house that was built in the 60s, so everything was kind of hand framed together. This is going to be a southern exposure, and you can tell this side here losing a little bit more of the stones than the rest. All of the bottom shingles are loose for some reason. Like, you can come up to the shingle and just pull them up. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. What else was there? There was something else. Oh, there's some cracking too, so you can just see, maybe you can just start to catch that there's starting some cracks, and I think that's the issue I had around that kitchen vent, is that when I pulled up the shingles to slide that hood in, I may have cracked a shingle by pulling it up. You know, you get your flat bar underneath there, you break it loose, and these shingles are so brittle, I think it cracked. You know, like this one here is kind of loose too. So that's what I think what happened with that. So it's time. I was hoping to push this out another 4 years, but I don't think it's worth trying to like patch it and then maybe deal with some leaks. So I'm just gonna go ahead and have it done, I guess, and hopefully the guy does a decent job. So here again, you can kind of see there's some fibers of that shingle, and you can't see the nail head, but they're starting to pop through. Probably have that issue because there's a second layer on here, shingles. The one guy just walked it and he said, yeah, there's a second layer. The rest kind of looked to investigate. So I don't know how the first guy, he just said it had too much bounce. So it's a pretty decent sized roof. This is where we took the chimney out. So these shingles here are not that old, maybe five years. So these obviously look nicer, got a better color. So, and then we got this little 3 seasons or 4 seasons sunroom or whatever. It's also got to be reshingled as well. So we're not doing gutters or anything like that, but definitely this is definitely going to be a project, and I'm probably going to take off some time from work just to make sure that it's done correctly. Here's what I was talking about with some of those crazy ridges going on in there and valleys. So there's a lot of cutting with this. They all talked about removing these vents and putting in like a ridge vent in there. The one guy said we could keep those if he really wanted. He'd put in, you know, obviously new ones, but could keep that same sort of design. Otherwise, he said, yeah, we can cut in a ridge vent. But the other 3 weren't even considering those vents. They were just going to put in a ridge vent. So basically, all using the same materials, same brand of shingle. Kind of figured different square footages, or square, I should say. But oh, and then time frame. The shortest time frame was 6 hours, which really surprised me that someone could get this entire roof done in 6 hours. They must have one heck of a crew going at a mad pace, and I don't know that I like that either, because things could get missed, and I want it done right so that I don't have to do another replacement in my lifetime.